Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In February 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers died on a mountain in the northern Ural Mountains under circumstances that have never been satisfactorily explained. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student, had set up camp on the slope of a mountain the local Mansi people called Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain, when rescuers found their tent. It had been cut open from the inside. The hikers had fled into the snow in their underclothes, in temperatures of -30°C, leaving their warm clothing behind. Their bodies were found over the following weeks and months. Some had died of hypothermia. Others had suffered catastrophic internal injuries, broken ribs, a crushed skull, a missing tongue, while showing minimal external damage. One woman had eyes but no eyeballs. The Soviet investigation concluded the hikers died of a compelling unknown force. 60 years later, the compelling unknown force still has no agreed-upon name. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers, and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports, but the dismissal is sometimes premature, and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny, and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Dyatlov group consisted of 9 hikers, all students or recent graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were experienced and well-equipped. Their goal was to reach the summit of Ural Mountain, a Category Roman 3 hike, the most difficult rating in the Soviet system. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the tent was found on February 26, 1959, on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. It was partially buried by snow, with ski poles and skis used as supports. The interior showed that the hikers had been preparing for sleep. Food was laid out, boots were arranged. Personal belongings were in order. The cuts in the tent fabric were made from the inside with a knife. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The bodies were found in several locations. 5 were discovered relatively near the tent. 4 were found in a ravine approximately 75 meters further away. The ravine bodies were found in May, hidden under 4 meters of snow. These 4 had the most severe injuries. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Lyudmila Dubinina had her tongue, eyes, lips, and part of her facial tissue missing. Nicholas Thibork-Sprignolal had a severe skull fracture. Semyon Zolotaryov and Alexander Kolvatov had broken ribs. The force required to produce the rib fractures was estimated to be equivalent to a car crash. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of investigators found that the clothing of some hikers showed unexplained levels of radioactivity, discovered when the investigation was reopened in 1990. The significance of this finding has been debated. It may reflect contamination from equipment rather than an external radioactive event. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Soviet investigation was led by investigator Lev Ivanov, who later stated in a 1990 interview that he had been pressured by Soviet officials to close the case quickly and classify the findings. He also stated his personal belief that the deaths involved some kind of energy or force he could not explain. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. Equally puzzling to investigators, a 2019 Russian government investigation concluded that a snow avalanche, specifically a slab avalanche releasing in the dark as the hikers slept, explained the injuries and the flight from the tent. Critics of this conclusion argue that the slope angle was too gentle for a slab avalanche and that no avalanche evidence was found at the scene. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that a spontaneous slab avalanche struck the tent while the hikers were preparing to sleep, injuring several and causing panic. The survivors cut open the tent from inside to escape further snow and fled downhill in confusion and shock, dying of hypothermia. The severe injuries resulted from the initial avalanche compression. This is the current Russian government's official explanation. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that infrasound generated by wind flowing over the mountain created a panic response in the hikers. Infrasound below 20 Hz is known to cause feelings of dread, disorientation, and loss of judgment. The hikers fled the tent in a state of infrasound-induced panic, and the injuries resulted from falls and crushing by snow accumulation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that a classified Soviet military experiment, possibly involving a rocket test, a weapons test, or an early version of a directed energy weapon, killed or incapacitated the hikers, and the Soviet investigation was pressured to close the case to conceal this fact. The radioactive contamination of clothing and the pressure on investigator Ivanov are consistent with this theory. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the internal cuts in the tent fabric are physical evidence that the hikers exited deliberately and in a hurry rather than being removed by an external force. This is consistent with a panic response to either an avalanche or infrasound. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the severity of the rib fractures in the ravine victims produced by force comparable to a car crash, while showing minimal external bruising, is consistent with compression from a slab of compacted snow rather than a fall or impact with a sharp object. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Soviet-era test launch records for the period, partially declassified, confirm that rocket tests were conducted in the Ural region in 1959. Witness accounts of fireballs in the sky near the pass in the weeks before and after the incident have been documented. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Dyatlov Pass Incident was reopened for official investigation by the Russian government in 2019, resulting in the slab avalanche conclusion. Most researchers who have studied the case do not find this conclusion fully convincing, given the absence of avalanche evidence at the scene and the gentle slope angle. The case was the subject of a Netflix documentary in 2021. It remains the most thoroughly studied unsolved mountain death in history, and one of the cases where the evidence genuinely does not fit any single neat explanation. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, Russia's most terrifying unsolved case, from the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Dyatlov Pass ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.